Hey everybody, this is Perch. Since I do so many of these videos from a car and gas is so expensive, is this channel a write-off at this point? Could I get the tax guy on that? Um, well, hopefully you're all having a good time. And I'm going to be taking a hiatus fairly soon. Not quite yet, but relatively soon. Going to be taking a bit of time off, so channel production content will slow down or just stop for a bit of time, and then we'll be back to it. So no harm, no foul. Probably good to get a little recharge. Have a fun little thing coming up. But I wanted to talk about kind of this feeling of comics and of ownership and kind of loss of feeling let down by some of the things that comics have done. And this is the kind of area where a lot of the comments, a lot of the fights, a lot of the drama, a lot of everything, it really stems from this idea of, and it's an idea that I think Hollywood's wrestling with, that a lot of these fandoms are fighting, is how do we juggle between what, when I'm talking here, I'm talking as a company, how do we juggle between what we want to do and what the fans want to do and try and reconcile the both? And when we make a move that the fans, the customers do not like, when they reject it, who's to blame for that? How do we recover from that? How do we change? How do we get their, how do we get their money anyway? And I think that comics has itself a kind of a strange situation going on that movies and other things do not have. And I'll point out to you this way. Now, definitely the money is a lot lower. So, it's a minor difference, but I think it's one that kind of hooks into everything. So here's my preposition for you. So with Star Wars, every time there's a movie that comes out, the Star Wars, the company, now Disney, has to get you to go to the theater to buy that ticket to go see the movie. You haven't already bought in. You didn't get a subscription to Star Wars movies. Now, if it's on Disney Plus, you are on a subscription there. So in many ways, Disney Plus may be a closer analogy to comics. But what Disney Plus doesn't have, that comics does have, is that comics has, decades and decades and decades of collector mentality of people who, don't want to break their runs, or, at least just have this feeling that I bought in for so long, I need to keep going. This is why in gaming, this is why MMOs were popular, and now you have loot type games that are popular, because what occurs is you buy the game, or in some cases the game is free, and then you start buying accessories for your character. And there comes a tipping point, and I swear to you, every electronics, every video game company has done this analysis. EA was kind of legendary for having done this analysis. It is, how much money do you, the customer, have to spend before you will stay attached to that game forever? Before, how much do you have to spend before we can just keep taking money from you and you won't turn it off because you feel like you're already invested, and if you left, you would be giving up this value? For EA, that dollar amount was a shockingly low $19. By the way, this isn't a secret bit of data. You can actually go and look at this online and research it. I encourage you to do. They determined that if you have a game and you pay $19 in additional money into that game, it was worth 2 years of ongoing commitment. And so if they could take that commitment and turn it into a subscription, or turn it into something where you're constantly paying, or run events like they do once a month where additional items are for sale, you'll just keep buying in. And if you keep buying in, then they have you as a user, and they have you on this track where they're continuously making money off of you. And that is what comic books are like, even if people don't always recognize that. Comic books, there are subscriptions to comics, but in most cases, the hook and the connection is in this feeling of being a collector. I've been collecting for so long. A lot of comic fans will tell you, well, I probably put thousands of dollars into the X-Men. By the way, there was another little experiment. This goes back a ways to the Comic Buyers Weekly. And there was this survey done where they had people guess how much money they'd put into comics. And almost to a fault, everybody guessed low, like way low. They were able to, then the person guessed, and then I don't know how they did it, but they went and actually worked with the person in the survey and they calculate it up, and people would guess like I probably spent like $2,000 in comics. It's like, well, actually, sir, you've spent $18,000 in comics, and it's always shocking to everybody. But the point is, people get to this feeling like, hey, I've been buying in, I cannot leave, and so they feel a little bit like held hostage. They feel like they're stuck, and so that generates a lot of behavior. It generates behavior that, in many cases, the comic companies, are very dependent on. They're desperate to keep. It creates a feeling like, hey, we can, in some cases, take a lot of these criticisms that our customers have for granted, or we can ignore them, because the reality is they're going to buy it anyway, and a lot of customers do. So if you dislike, say, the new direction of the X-Men, like me, I don't like it, but I also buy in anyway. I'm still giving them my money. Now, you're welcome to, go into the comments like, well, Perch, you're a fool, you're an idiot. I mean, by all means, join the party. But it's this dynamic that creates a number of different effects that in many cases, nobody really wants to wrestle with. Not the customer, not the publisher. For the publisher, you see a lot of angst around why are the customers angry? Why are they complaining? Why don't they just take what we give them? And then they it's very difficult for them to wrestle with the idea that, hey, maybe the stuff they're producing isn't good, or maybe the quality has slipped. In a lot of cases, these publishers know the quality has slipped. They know this because they knew that at one time they used to pay, say, $100 a page, and now they pay $60 a page. So they're paying less, and they are aware that, hey, in that, we probably are cutting some corners. Many editors have told me in the past, like, yeah, we're using a lot of people overseas. It's very difficult to get a hold of them. It's just the job is harder. The job is less fun. People know that things aren't great, but they don't really want to admit it. And if you're getting paid fairly low salaries and an editor, do you really want to wander around and complain? Well, first off, you're going to get fired if you do that. They're going to boot you out, and then you have to start completely all over. And two, it's just not, nobody gets a lot of great morale from constantly feeling like they're doing the wrong thing. So of course they're going to say, we're doing our best. It's the fans that are wrong. And it's the fans that are wrong kind of train of thought. In 2022, unfortunately, it's not just enough to say, hey, you're wrong. Look at any online argument. If somebody's having a fight, you have like a hot 3 minutes before somebody is going to call the other person a Nazi or a fascist or whatever, because that's all we know how to do now. If you disagree with somebody, well, the person must be Hitler. Literal Hitler. Robot Hitler. No, I went too far. Literal Hitler. It has to be. It's the only possible explanation, because it's too much work to actually debate people, to actually have a constructive argument. It's hard. You have to come up with facts. You have to come up with proof. And the internet has generated lots of cheap ways to get around those arguments. The biggest one being just call the other person a name, ideally of the most horrible human being of all time, and maybe throw a couple other things on there, and then you could do a little smoke and mirrors with you're gaslighting me, or show me your receipts, or by the way, one of the dumbest arguments is always like, it's just pointless. If somebody says something and I disagree with it, my reaction is, well, I'm moving on. I mean, why would I keep disagreeing? Why would I keep talking to somebody that I fundamentally don't believe is telling the truth that I disagree with? Why would I do that? That's the definition of insanity. But people do. People are happy to, basically just continue. And they'll do this like, well, you have to go prove to me what you say is true. Go give me links. Go give me receipts. Give me the receipts. It's like nobody wants the receipts. You just want to argue. You want to send somebody off on a weird little mission on your behalf. This is all just phony. If you disagree with somebody, stop. Leave. Don't keep arguing. What are you doing? You dumbass. Get on. Move on with your life. What kind of crazy world is this where you just continue to ride this thing into the ground? It's nuts. Anyway. But the thing is that so this is what happens. So the collectors, the customers, they complain about something they're not enjoying. They're buying it anyway. because they feel like they're kind of trapped doing it, which frankly makes them more irritable and more grouchy the entire time. And then the creators, the publishers who don't really enjoy being part of this conversation, they immediately flip to, well, the people complaining have to be, these are not real customers. These are not people who are normal and sane. They must be white supremacists. They must be. Only possible explanation. And then the customers go, I don't like being called a white supremacist. So then they get more irritable and they act up. And then you get to where you're at. But very commonly, when we talk about these things, I'll see people that come into the comments and they'll say things like, well, how would you feel if somebody came over to your house that you own and they crapped all over it, or they went to a museum and they took a famous piece of art like the Mona Lisa and they decided to say Mona Lisa is, I don't know, trans now, and they like glued a penis on her, or I don't know, whatever. Like, how would that make you feel? And the answer is pretty shitty. It would make me feel bad. I like going to art museums. I like looking at famous pieces of work. And so if somebody came in and vandalized them, or even if they thought they were doing a great job, but I found it offensive and terrible, I'd be upset. Absolutely, I'd be upset. I'd feel like somebody is wrecking something very valuable, and so I'd be angry and I'd call it out and I'd say, what's going on here? This is bullshit. What you're doing here. I'd be upset. However, and this is the hard thing that people have to wrestle with, and this is always what I'm about to say are the kinds of comments that always gets people into the Perch is an industry mainstream apologist. It's not an apologist. It's called being pragmatic. Even though it would bother me, I don't own the Mona Lisa. I don't own these rich pieces of art. I would find it horrible. I would complain. I would say this is bad. Somebody should do something about this. I would be upset. And the museum or whoever basically owns this piece of work shouldn't be surprised that they're radically changing something. This is the part that's always strikes me as phony and stupid about comics publishing, is that it's the phony outrage. And it is phony. How could these customers possibly be complaining with all these radical shifts that we've made in this character? I do not understand how it could be. Hey, we took Superman, a character who had been around forever, and we gave him a son, and then we aged up the son, and then we said the son was gay, and then we sent Superman off into space. I don't know why everybody's upset about this. How could they be? They must all be bigots. Come on. Yes, I'm sure a few of them are, but not the overwhelming majority. The overwhelming majority is just trying to figure out what the hell just happened. That's all. I guarantee you, if you tell a wonderful story, if you tell a kind of exciting, compelling tale, people will all get back on board. Because we've seen that in the past. This is not new, which to me at least adds to the irritation. We've seen this stuff so much in the past. There's and I'll use the word literally, nothing new about, hey, you come in, you try some radical change, people dislike it, they complain, you either fix it, get things back on track, or you do such a good job telling the story that people come around. This was the case when Frank Miller went on Daredevil, by the way. Some people bitched hard. And you could still go even to the pirate sites and find some of those old issues with some of the letter pages, stuff that got printed. You could look at some of the conversation that was going on at the time. There are people who are pissed about that move. Why? I have no idea. They were pissed. And as it turned out, Frank Miller's work was pretty damn good. And when it was pretty damn good, people said, you know what, maybe I'll just shut up a little bit here and enjoy the comic. That's the antidote. Win them over or change course. That's it. But in 2022, the thing that we feel compelled to do is gaslight all the people complaining by calling them names, saying it's their fault somehow, and then just continue to drive off the cliff. Why do people do this? I mean, to me, the biggest reason is because they don't own the characters. They don't, just like I have to tell the customers sometimes, like, yeah, we can complain. Yeah, it hurts to see these changes, but we don't own them. Guess what? The writers and the editors and the people working on the comics, they don't own them either. These characters are owned by corporations at a much higher level. And so nobody owns any of this stuff. And I think that while the customers view this as being helpless and in many cases irritable because they're seeing something that was, a property they've been buying into and spending thousands of dollars on, the publishers see this often as a reason not to get invested. I mean, yeah, I come in, I screw up Spider-Man. I mean, I'm telling the best story I can, but at the end of the day, he's not mine. And I apologize. I will say I apologize because there are definitely some creators out there who take it very, very seriously. However, there's some that definitely do not, that view this all as it's work for hire. I've got no insurance. And by the way, it's kind of hard, other than the simple argument of, if you're getting paid to do a job, you should still take pride in your work. Even if you're not getting paid enough, even if the company you're working for is lousy, go work for a better company. But, you still, if you hate your job at McDonald's, that does not give you the excuse to go into McDonald's in your pajamas and just crap on the floor because, the company sucks. You took the job, so try and do it the best you can. I don't know. It's all tangled up. Yes, the reality is we don't own those characters. They're not ours. And because we don't own them, it means that we can complain. It's a free country. You absolutely can complain. But at the end of the day, the only real remedy for the customer is to stop buying. Either they're going to win you over or they're not. And so there is at some point, the only fool, and I say this as the guy who's still shelling out money to the X-Men, so I'm not holding myself on any kind of special platter. The only fool is the person who keeps sinking the money into it. Everybody, if you hate it, get out. Have to. But again, at the same time, the creators and the publishers, please stop. Please stop pretending like you have no idea how we got here. There's none of this. I can't imagine why anybody's complaining about any of this. All we did was take the X-Men and make them travel through time as kids and come to the future. And then, young Jean Grey hangs out with, Cyclops, who she is married to in some kind of weird relationship, but that's strange enough. And then she's going to reach into Bobby's mind and reveal the character's gay, even though it completely contradicts, major arcs of Bobby in X Factor. But, I'm sure it will be fine. As a publisher, you have the right to do it. Disney owns it. They've given you the authority to write those characters. You've got the job. You definitely have the ability to do that. That's the power you as a creator publisher has. What you don't have the power of is that everybody has to like it. And quite frankly, unless you're a true idiot, you have to know that some of these things are going to make people mad. It does not take a rocket scientist or a genius to go, hey, this character that's been around for 50 odd years may have a bunch of people who've, gotten themselves very connected to it emotionally. Should people get emotionally connected to comic characters? Probably not, but that's a whole different topic. They have. It is disingenuous at best to suggest that I had no idea that people would react poorly to that. Of course they're going to react poorly to that. People react poorly. Look at, using a Disney example. There's a ride there like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's a relatively, simple, quiet ride. It's not the most exciting thing. You're in a little cart that bounces up and down as it kind of reveals a bunch of animatronics doing the Mr. Toad story. And Disney comes in and says, we're going to close Mr. Toad and we're going to replace it with, I don't remember what, a newer brand. One of their movies that they make more money off of, so that's more recent. And by the way, Mr. Toad may have some, problematic things in it that we don't like. Same thing happened with Song of the South. If you go on that ride, Splash Mountain, they had the Song of the South attached to it. First of all, the vast majority of kids and people riding that ride had no idea this Song of the South movie even existed. And if they did, the only parts they really remember well are the Briar Rabbit, Briar Fox, getting stuck in the tar, and then, having to get away before the rabbit got eaten. They also remember some older black guy with cartoon animals singing to himself like a crazy person. That's all they remember. You can put a gun to the people's heads. They will all, that's all they're going to recall. Now, if you watch that movie, I watched that movie a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This thing is all about slavery. Like major parts of it are all about slavery, and a lot of this plot's terrible. Like, it's a boring ass movie. I'm sorry. Like the kid is there and he's kind of a jerk. He's having to go live with the relatives, and then Uncle Remus is there trying to do something. Like the whole subplot there is like, laughingly bad. But Disney's going to change the ride because a movie dealt with slavery. Now, the movie wasn't pro-slavery for what it's worth. I mean, it represented slavery, but it wasn't like Uncle Remus is out there, going, thank God we're all slaves. He wouldn't do any of that. The argument against it is that he was too cheerful. Which, sure. I mean, sure. But again, no kid's going to pick up on any of that. So regardless, Disney changes the ride to what the Princess and the Frog, Splash Mountain. They replace the animatronics. They take out the Briar Rabbit. They insert a crocodile playing a horn. And it's like, all right, we got a new ride, sort of. And a lot of longtime Disney fans lost their shit. They lost their shit because for some of them, Splash Mountain was the first ride they ever rode on. They didn't want it to change. Or maybe they proposed to their significant other on Splash Mountain or in Splash Mountain. Maybe at home they've got photos of them in a little stupid log and getting water slammed in their face as they go down the drop. For a lot of reasons, people were upset. They're upset because Disney was, in effect, taking away a memory. Disney had a moment to look at that and go, yeah, I mean, we're going to change the ride anyway, but it's reasonable, that these fans are, that are going to miss the ride that they loved. It's reasonable that people get attached to things. Our entire business model, comics, movies, everything else, is about getting people attached to things so we can take their money. That is the entire point of all this stuff. So it's reasonable that people are upset about this and maybe angry about this because they have great memories and they feel like those memories are going away, so they're upset. Disney had the opportunity to do that. Instead, Disney's like, well, all the people complaining must be white supremacists who somehow are wanting to support slavery through a log drop ride that features zero elements of slavery and is mostly about a cartoon rabbit. But yeah, absolutely. The KKK is all over wanting the hill that they're going to die on is keeping Splash Mountain to feature Uncle Remus. It didn't Uncle Remus wasn't even on that ride in the first place. But anyway, that's absurd. And that's kind of where comics are now. Look, you're making changes. You have the right to do that. But don't gaslight the customers by saying you have no idea at all how people could be upset. I mean, come on. And why must we go round and round with this stupidity for year after year after year after year after year? Yes, the customers do need to accept the fact that at the end of the day, it's not theirs. And the best power they have is the power of their wallet. They can just stop. But the companies also need to accept that, hey, a lot of the people yelling are not yelling because they're awful, bigoted, awful people. They're yelling because they were collectors you encouraged, collectors you wanted, money you wanted. They did what you asked them to do, which was to buy in and keep buying. And then you changed it. You don't have to never change it. Change it as much as you want. Again, you own it. And you can even be pissed that the changes you made didn't work and the fans rebelled. I mean, you can be upset about that. But don't pretend it's more than it is. Thanks for listening.